Ladies and gentlemen, many men, when faced with heartbreak, resort to the no contact rule as if it were a magic spell. They think that by simply vanishing, by erasing themselves from her world, she will suddenly recognize their worth and come crawling back. But let me tell you something. Silence alone is weak if not backed by transformation. No contact is often mistaken for a strategy, when in reality, it is only a tool. A tool is useless if the hands that wield it are weak. Simply cutting off communication does not undo the psychological imbalances that led to the downfall of the relationship. It does not erase the insecurities, the neediness, or the lack of direction that may have suffocated the attraction in the first place. Silence, in and of itself, is passive, and passivity has never commanded respect. The mistake most men make is assuming that absence alone will do the work for them, that if they simply step away, she will feel their value, that withholding attention will create longing, that retreating will stir regret. But longing is not created by mere distance, it is created by contrast. If the man she remembers is the same man she left, then silence does nothing but confirm her decision. If she walked away because she felt uninspired, unchallenged, or unexcited, then disappearing without growth only reinforces her indifference. No contact should never be about waiting. A man who waits is a man who relinquishes power. Waiting assumes that time alone will shift perception, but time only amplifies what is already there. If she saw weakness, time will solidify that image. If she felt uncertainty, time will confirm it. Only through transformation does absence become a force rather than a void. Silence must be backed by undeniable progress. No woman questions her decision to leave a stagnant man. But every woman reevaluates when faced with a man who has stepped into his full potential. The absence must be filled with intensity of action, of discipline, of self-respect. When a man who was once desperate for her attention suddenly channels all that energy into his own ascension, the shift is felt on a deep psychological level. People are drawn to power, not to passivity. If no contact is used as a means to sulk, to hope, or to wallow in self-pity, it becomes nothing more than emotional retreat. A silent man who is still weak is just as invisible as a man who begs. But a man who uses that silence to sharpen himself, to become undeniable, forces a reaction, whether she admits it or not. A woman does not regret leaving because you disappear. She regrets it when your disappearance leads to something extraordinary, when the man she once knew is no longer the man that exists, when the version of you she discarded no longer holds relevance, when the new version of you is beyond what she ever expected. That is the moment absence turns into impact. This is not about making her miss you. It is about making yourself so compelling that even in her most confident moments, she hesitates. Even in her most certain convictions, she questions. Even in her silence, she feels the shift. And the shift is not created by time. It is created by undeniable transformation. Most men fear being forgotten. They fear that if they do not reach out, they will be erased from her mind. But true presence is not maintained through contact. It is maintained through memory, through perception, through energy. If the last version of you was weak, then reaching out only reinforces that weakness. If the last version of you was desperate, then words will never undo that image. Only action, unseen but deeply felt, has the power to rewrite perception. The irony is when a man masters the art of walking away, when he truly lets go, that is when he becomes unforgettable. Not because he withdrew, but because his withdrawal was a statement of worth, of strength, of unshakable conviction. A statement that says, I do not chase. I do not linger in places that do not recognize value. I do not seek validation outside of myself. And that statement is deafening because it is so rare, because it is so foreign to those who expect weakness, because it is so powerful in a world filled with men who cannot let go. That kind of energy shifts the narrative. That kind of energy forces respect. And respect is the foundation of attraction. A man who begs for love loses respect. A man who fears losing love remains trapped in scarcity. But a man who knows his worth, who walks away not out of spite but out of purpose, becomes a force to be reckoned with, not just to her, but to the world. And the world recognizes power when it sees it. Your greatest leverage is not in trying to be missed, It is in becoming so formidable, so exceptional, so undeniably valuable that your absence is not just noticed, it is felt like a void that cannot be ignored. Not because you played a game, but because your transformation was real. Because your silence carried the weight of a man who knows he is meant for more. Because your evolution became your greatest response. And that is why no contact alone is never enough. Because silence is neutral, but progress is power. Rebuilding yourself is not an option. It is the only path forward. Walking away means nothing if you remain the same. No woman is drawn back to a man who has not changed. No absence is powerful unless it is backed by undeniable growth. If you cut contact and remain stagnant, all you have done is remove yourself from her world while keeping her perception of you intact. And if that perception was weak, nothing has changed. A break means nothing if you return as the same man she left. Most men wait. They sit in silence, hoping time will create longing. They resist the urge to reach out, thinking that restraint alone is enough. But time does not change people. Action does. You must step into a version of yourself that commands attention, not through words, not through effort to be seen, but through the energy of undeniable transformation. Rebuilding yourself is not about making her regret leaving. It is about making yourself so powerful, so complete, so unwavering, that whether she returns or not is irrelevant. The goal is not to win her back. The goal is to become the man who never needed her validation in the first place. When a man fully embraces his potential, the past loses its grip on him. And when the past loses its grip, the woman who once walked away begins to see what you never saw before. You cannot just disappear, you must evolve. You cannot just go silent. You must become louder in your presence, in your achievements, in the way you carry yourself. The absence of communication must be filled with the presence of progress. If she were to look back, would she see a man who was merely waiting? Or would she see a man who took his pain and forged it into something unstoppable? Strength is not in silence. Strength is in transformation. You must take every ounce of rejection, every piece of self-doubt, every whisper of weakness, and turn it into the fire that drives you forward. The world does not respect a man who lingers in his past. The world respects a man who builds his future with relentless determination. Every second you waste dwelling on what was is a second stolen from what could be. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you free yourself from the chains of needing her approval. And the moment you free yourself is the moment you become dangerous. Not because you wish to harm, but because you have mastered yourself to the point where no one's absence can shake you. A man's value is not in how much he is desired, but in how much he creates, how much he dominates his own path, how much he refuses to be defined by loss. No woman truly desires a man who cannot stand alone. Strength is intoxicating. Independence is magnetic. A man on a mission is impossible to ignore. When she left, she expected you to break. She expected you to falter, to reach out, to seek closure, to prove your worth. But a man who is truly rebuilding does none of that. He does not explain himself. He does not beg to be seen. He disappears, but not into nothingness. He disappears into the process of becoming everything she thought he could never be. You must master your emotions, not be ruled by them. Pain is fuel. Rejection is instruction. Loss is the ultimate catalyst for reinvention. If you channel your energy into regret, you waste the very force that could turn you into a man that not only she, but the entire world would take notice of. The moment you shift your focus from what you lost to what you can become, everything changes. The gym is not just about lifting weight. It is about lifting yourself out of weakness, out of the version of you that she walked away from. The pursuit of knowledge is not just about learning. It is about sharpening your mind so that no one can ever make you feel inadequate again. The discipline to build your future is not just about success. It is about proving to yourself and no one else that you were never defined by her acceptance. Imagine her seeing you again, not as the man who once longed for her attention, but as the man she now questions letting go. Imagine her realizing that while she moved on, you move forward. Imagine her witnessing the undeniable force of the man you have become. A man so immersed in his own purpose that the past is nothing more than a stepping stone. That is power. That is control. That is what rebuilding truly means. Every ounce of effort you put into yourself is felt on a level that transcends words. Women are not drawn to apologies, they are drawn to presence. They are drawn to confidence, to certainty, to a man whose actions declare that he is no longer waiting. If you want to make an impact, do not sit in silence. Do not hope she notices. Become so undeniable that she has no choice but to feel your absence in ways she never expected. The weak man waits, the strong man builds. The weak man hopes, the strong man executes. The weak man wonders if she still thinks about him. The strong man becomes so focused on his own elevation that whether she does or not is irrelevant. And that is when she feels it. That is when she questions. That is when she realizes she may have left behind something she will never find again. Rebuilding yourself is not revenge. It is not manipulation. It is not about proving a point. It is about reclaiming the power you lost when you made her the center of your world. It is about becoming the man you were always meant to be, not for her, not for validation, but for yourself. Because the moment you truly grasp this, the past no longer controls you. And when the past no longer controls you, you become the kind of man that no woman ever truly forgets. Let absence be more than just silence. Let it be the proof of your evolution, the undeniable evidence that you are no longer the man she walked away from. When a woman leaves, she expects stillness, not movement. She expects emptiness, not transformation. If your absence is only defined by the lack of words, then you have wasted the most powerful opportunity you will ever have. Absence must scream. It must echo. It must remind her, not just of who you were, but of who you have become. People do not regret losing what remains the same. They regret losing what they can no longer reach, what they can no longer possess, what has elevated beyond their grasp. You must become the living proof that separation was not your end, but your rebirth. The version of you that was left behind no longer exists. If she were to search for him, she would find nothing but his shadow. In his place stands a man refined by fire, sharpened by discipline, and strengthened by self-mastery. Nothing is more powerful than contrast. The man she once knew was predictable, comfortable, perhaps even weak. The man she now sees, whether directly or through whispers of his progress, is different, untamed, untouchable. Where there was once longing, there is now purpose. Where there was once hesitation, there is now certainty. Where there was once dependency, there is now complete and utter control. Silence alone is forgettable, but silence backed by visible, undeniable growth is haunting. A woman does not feel the absence of a man who simply waits in the dark, hoping she will return. She feels the absence of a man who has stepped into the light of his own power. A man who has become so much more than she ever imagined. A man who does not seek, does not plead, does not look back. A man who moves forward with such intensity that his presence is felt even in his distance. Growth is louder than words. When she looks back, she should not see the man she left behind. She should see the man she never saw coming. The man she thought she understood, now an enigma. The man she believed she could predict, now beyond comprehension. Nothing unsettles the mind more than the realization that someone has outgrown the space you once held in their life. Nothing shakes the soul more than the knowledge that you are no longer needed, no longer relevant, no longer in control. This is not about proving her wrong. It is about proving yourself right. It is about realizing that every ounce of energy you once poured into her must now be redirected into the empire you are building. Every thought, every emotion, every second you once spent in pursuit of her validation must now be turned inward into your own ascension. The world does not stop for heartbreak. The universe does not wait for a man who lingers in his past. It rewards the man who moves, who builds, who conquers. Your evolution should be so profound that even if she never sees you again, she feels the shift in her bones. She hears your name and does not think of the man who once longed for her, but of the man who became untouchable. She remembers not because you reminded her, but because the absence of your old self is so glaring that it cannot be ignored. She wonders not because you left clues, but because the contrast between then and now is so sharp, it cuts through every assumption she once held. Women do not feel the loss of a man who fades into obscurity. They feel the loss of a man who rises so high that the only way to reach him is to regret ever letting him go. They feel the loss of a man whose progress is undeniable, whose energy is magnetic, whose presence, whether near or far, is unforgettable. Every action you take in this phase of your life should be fueled by one question. Are you becoming the man who cannot be ignored? Are you stepping so fully into your power that the idea of you remaining stagnant is laughable? Are you developing yourself so relentlessly that the world begins to take notice, that doors begin to open, that opportunities begin to flood into your life simply because you refuse to be the man she expected you to be? Your absence must not be empty. It must be filled with progress so intense that it creates a void, a space where you once were, now occupied by the legend of the man you have become. A man who does not chase, who does not dwell, who does not break. A man who has harnessed pain as fuel, who has turned loss into wisdom, who has shaped rejection into the foundation of his empire. You are either forgotten or remembered, and the difference lies in what your absence represents. If it represents longing, you have already lost. If it represents evolution, you have already won. Mastery over emotion is the foundation of power. The man who cannot control his emotions is a slave to them, bound by impulses that weaken him, dictated by reactions that strip him of his strength. Emotion, when uncontrolled, is the weapon that dismantles a man from the inside out. But when mastered, it becomes the very force that makes him unstoppable. The world does not respect a man who is ruled by his feelings. The world bends to the man who owns them. She expects you to break. She expects you to act out of pain, to reach, to crumble, to let your emotions dictate your decisions. But the moment you show restraint, the moment you silence the chaos inside you and replace it with precision, the dynamic shifts. She no longer sees a man who is at the mercy of his heart. She sees a man who has risen above it. And that, more than anything, is what separates the weak from the strong. When you react, you reveal your weakness. Every message sent in desperation, every attempt to seek closure, every plea to be seen again is proof that she still holds power over you. And as long as she holds power, you are beneath her. But the moment you stop reacting, the moment you detach, the moment you show her that your emotional world is no longer hers to control, something happens. The grip she had on you loosens. The pedestal she stood on begins to crumble. The certainty she once had in your weakness is replaced by doubt. Nothing is more unsettling than a man who is unmoved. A man who once cared deeply but now walks away with absolute composure. A man who once sought validation but now seeks only his own evolution. A man who once made her his center, now standing so firmly in his own path that nothing can shake him. And when a woman senses emotional mastery, she senses something rare, something uncommon, something most men will never possess. You must kill the need for reassurance. You must kill the urge to be understood. You must kill the desire to explain yourself. The moment you remove emotion from your decisions and replace it with logic, with discipline, with unwavering control, you become something else entirely. Not just a man, but a force. Emotional control is not repression. It is not avoidance. It is not burying pain under distraction. It is the conscious decision to channel every ounce of emotion into something productive. It is taking heartbreak and forging it into discipline. It is taking rejection and turning it into focus. It is taking loss and making it the birthplace of something greater. You have no right to complain about the past if you are still controlled by it. You have no right to dwell on what was if your emotions are still dictated by her presence. If she can still trigger you, if she can still pull reactions out of you, then you are still bound to her, still attached, still imprisoned. But when you master yourself, when you become so solid that nothing external can dictate your internal world, you step into the realm of true power. Power is not in making her feel your pain. Power is in making her feel your absence without a single word, without a single move, without a single ounce of effort. Power is in the mystery of a man who does not falter, who does not reach back, who does not seek to be seen, but is noticed regardless. When a woman sees a man who is no longer emotionally available to her, who has detached not out of bitterness but out of strength, she feels it in a way that words could never convey. Most men are controlled by emotion. Most men act out of impulse, out of desperation, out of the inability to sit in silence without breaking. But you are not most men. You do not react. You do not chase. You do not let the past dictate your future. You take control. You dictate your own narrative. Who become the man who no longer needs, who no longer wavers, who no longer gives anyone the power to decide his worth. Silence is powerful when it is not empty, When it is filled with mastery, with transformation, with a man who no longer seeks validation but instead commands respect, when she sees that you have not just walked away but elevated, that you have not just gone silent but grown, that you have not just let go but risen above, she will feel the weight of what she lost. Not because you forced her to see it, but because emotional mastery cannot be ignored. Every time you react, you lose power. Every time you give in to emotion, you weaken your position. Every time you let her see that she still controls your state of mind, you remind her that she was right to leave. But when you master yourself, when you no longer need to react, when you hold yourself with such unwavering certainty that nothing phases you, that is when the power returns to you. That is when the respect shifts. That is when she looks back and realizes she never truly knew the man you have become. Mastery is in discipline. Mastery is in restraint. Mastery is in the ability to walk away without looking back. Not because you are cold, not because you do not feel, but because you refuse to be controlled by anything outside of yourself. Mastery is in the ability to take pain and build with it, to take loss and use it as fuel, to take every emotion that once made you weak and transmute it into something unshakable. She will feel it not because you told her, not because you made her see it, but because a man who has mastered himself is undeniable. A man who no longer chases, who no longer reacts, who no longer places his worth in the hands of another, is a man who cannot be ignored. She will feel it in the space where your weakness used to be. She will feel it in the silence that is no longer filled with longing but with certainty. She will feel it in the realization that while she moved on, you moved forward, and there is a difference. The man who masters himself masters everything. No contact is not about silence, it is about evolution. It is about stepping so fully into your power that your absence is felt more than your presence ever was. It is about rebuilding yourself into someone unrecognizable, someone undeniable, someone whose value is no longer tied to another's perception. It is about turning pain into fuel, rejection into strength, and loss into an unstoppable rise. You do not win by waiting. You do not win by hoping she notices. You win by becoming the man she never expected you to be, the man who no longer needs her validation, who no longer reacts, who no longer wavers in his pursuit of greatness. The man who walks away not because he is bitter, but because he has something far greater to build than a memory. Let her feel it, not through words, not through longing, but through the undeniable force of your transformation. Let your silence be filled with progress. Let your absence be a reminder of what she lost. Let your evolution be so profound that the past no longer defines you. The man who can do this does not need to chase. He does not need to explain. He does not need to prove anything, because he has already won.